Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host Greg Thompson, joined by my partner in crime, Aaron Quinn. Aaron, how we doing?
Dude, I am not going to lie to you. We do the show all season long, all off season long. I had almost anxiety of how excited I was to get on here and do the show because it's game week and the game preview show is back. It feels like it's been so long since we threw this game preview show logo up. We're here. It feels real. Injury reports came out. We're hearing from the coordinators. It's real, man. And so I've been pumped all day to talk to you. I hope that you've been excited to talk to me too.
Absolutely. I have been looking forward to this all night. It's been, it feels real. Now we're there. We're days away. We're going to see another football game tomorrow night. It's going to be fun. So we have a special guest coming on tonight. Before we dive into that, tonight's show brought to you by our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Use promo code COVER1 to download the app. Get yourself $25 free. Our friends over at Uncle Jumbo's. Aaron enjoying one himself this evening. We're going to get to the Uncle Jumbo Spotlight Player later on this show and be able to dive into that. But tonight, another sponsor for the show, our friends over at T-Shirt University, working on some great stuff. You can head on over to the Walden Galleria, check out their store. All kinds of awesome gear there for the Bills. Fantastic stuff that you can pick up. Everything that you'd be wanting to look at. They got all kinds of stuff for you. They also are now bringing in an exclusive new shirt from our friends Del Reed and all the guys over there with the friends at 26 Shirts. They are bringing in an exclusive new shirt next week, September 15th. You can only get this new Mafia Ready shirt at the Walden Galleria store for T-Shirt University. Make sure you're checking it out over there. They'll have it available on September 15th. Get you ready for the season. Fantastic shirt. I can't wait to get one myself. I'm going to be wearing it. Really looking forward to it. But make sure you check out Dave and all the guys over there at T-Shirt University. They're going to be helping you out, get you ready for this season. All the best gear.
That's where I got this Mafia shirt, where every game week it's part of my game week rotation. So
I like it.
Thank you.
But tonight is about diving into this matchup with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and who better to help us do that than our senior editor of NFL Sites with USA Today Sports Media Group, our man, Neal Coolong. Neal, how we doing? Welcome to the show. How is life?
Oh, life is great. I'm happy to be here. Thank you guys for having me. I want to share the same enthusiasm. Excited for the start of the season. Everything's looking good. Probably more so in Buffalo than here in Pittsburgh, but we're excited anyway. It's football. It's the fall. I love this time of year. It doesn't get any better than this.
Absolutely. And I know, it goes without saying, the Steelers are, one of the most preeminent franchises in the NFL. Mike Tomlin has never had a losing season, even when Duck Hodges is leading the helm. This is a new feeling for Bills fans. You guys have a few more reps in coming into a season with a level of confidence and expectation. This is a little new for us. We're not used to these shows talking about our team. We're not used to these people picking the Bills to win championships and things like that. It is a very foreign feeling. So pardon us if we're still kind of getting used to it as the season goes.
I think you should be excited. I'll say this though. I'm quoting myself from earlier in this offseason. This is how I know the apocalypse is upon us. I can totally see the Browns or the Bills going to the Super Bowl for the AFC. That absolutely can happen. And
as long as the apocalypse happens after
the day after,
that's fine.
Let me have that night and the day after.
I'll be honest too. I think Buffalo would win that game. That's not just because I'm on this show, but Buffalo's a great team. Pittsburgh has typically been somebody that you worry about in the AFC, and I think there's a kind of a hangover effect going on right now. But for me, Pittsburgh has been in a rebuild mode for the most part this offseason. I think they're off to a good start. I think they've made the moves that they need to make to build back up to be a contender in the AFC. I would look at it almost similarly to where Buffalo was 3 years ago. They just don't have Josh Allen. They don't have the 7th overall pick, but they're going to make the moves they need to rebuild their team from the ground up. Now, they're not going to tell you that. They've got tickets to sell. They've got a reputation to maintain. But the reality is, you're talking about a team that I look back on this, and it only went back 30 years. But this Steelers team is the first team over the last 30 seasons in the NFL to start a rookie left tackle that was drafted in the 4th round or later. And on top of that, they've got a rookie center who was drafted in the 3rd round. It wasn't that long ago for Steelers fans. They were super excited because they drafted David DeCastro in the 1st round and Mike Adams, the then thought to be stud tackle from Ohio State in the 2nd round. And they rebuilt their offensive line. You're talking about 90 picks later is where they acquired these players. So these are not high level guys immediately. Now I'll be honest. I like what Dan Moore, the projected starting left tackle for the Steelers, at least for the first 3 weeks of the season. I like what we've seen of him to this point, but you're talking about, this is week 1 again, at Buffalo. He's not Anthony Munoz. I know that. So let's be honest. I don't know how that's going to work out, but that's just one example of an area of the team that they're really going to have to transition. And it's going to have to be, kind of a growing pain. They're throwing these guys in right away and probably teaching them how to swim as they go along.
Now, in terms of the national perspective of this team, and even I think Bills fans, when we're talking about this matchup, I don't think it's not that far removed. You're talking about this team's in a rebuild with the Steelers, but they're not far removed from just winning 11 games in a row. And when they were coming in to play Buffalo right before they started to kind of sort of hit a wall at the end of last year, that team started to fatigue down the stretch. Going into that game, though, I think there was some real concern. If you go back and watch our preview show for that one, it was a real concern that this was a powerhouse team. And while there was a lot of turnover for the Steelers, there's still a lot of these guys are returning. You're still returning a number of the guys on defense. You still have that Hall of Fame QB. Do you think that the perception nationally and among other fan bases is fair that they've fallen off so far? Or is that more recency bias of how they finished the season and not how they played for the majority of the season a year ago?
I think first and foremost, you have to be able to say about the Steelers team that they legitimately won 11 games in a row, and they absolutely hit a wall, and then the wall fell on top of them and then buried them 6 feet under the ground. They were awful at the end of last season. I thought they'd be able to get through Cleveland in the playoffs just because of the fact that half of Cleveland had COVID, including their coach. It just kind of seemed to be a bad moment for them. But Pittsburgh really was kind of a house of cards team last year, and they were able to navigate their way around a lot of the shortcomings that they had early on. They got some great play from Ben Roethlisberger in key moments in a lot of those games. A couple of them they really shouldn't have won, and they were able to kind of pull it off. The Dallas game, for example, that was a really undermatched Dallas team. Somehow or other, they gave Pittsburgh everything they were worth. Pittsburgh loses that game if you have even a remotely competent quarterback, which they didn't at that point. They lost everybody. So, I think they caught a couple breaks, but they legitimately won a lot of those games, and they were doing it averaging 27, 28 points a game too. When it fell apart because they never had anything else. I mean, I hate crossing sports cliches, but it's like, if you have a 98-mile-an-hour fastball, that can work for you for 7 innings, but they're going to catch up to it eventually. And that's what happened with the Steelers down the stretch. All of a sudden now, it was noticeable that they were running for 3.2 yards a carry. It was noticeable that they had no offensive line that could protect for longer than 3 seconds. Everything that they did was predicated on getting the ball into short space to athletic receivers who could make plays after the catch. People figured that out and dared them to say, okay, well, you know what? You keep doing this, and this is all you're doing. So we're going to sit on the line, and we're going to make you complete those passes, and we're going to tackle them for 4 yards a pop. Their punts doubled down the stretch. They had no offense at all, and there's only so much a defense can do. And the defense, keep in mind, had lost Devin Bush after 6 weeks, an excellent young playmaker for him, and then lost Bud Dupree in December, right before that stretch. They're able to make up for that as individuals, but there's always a resounding effect to losing starters among a team defense in particular. There are certain things that you can't do anymore, especially when you have an athletic freak like Bud Dupree. He may not put up the statistics that you're looking for, but there are a lot of things that they could do in concert with that ability. We talked off air about, tackle end stunts, things like that. It may not be a timing thing as much, but Dupree can move that space a lot faster than Alex Highsmith could, his replacement, now the starter in Pittsburgh. You lose all of that. There are only so many punches you're going to be able to take. And if anything, I would grade last year for the Steelers as a team that probably overachieved quite a bit. It's pretty remarkable that they were able to go on the streak that they did. And then they regressed to the mean. They lost 5 of 6 to end the season, convincingly in some cases when they're launching snaps over the quarterback's head in the first snap of a playoff game. Things like that. It came back to haunt them at the end. And I think even knowing that, overall, to me, I think they overachieved probably a little bit. I think they're going to fall off, but they're not a 3-win, 4-win team. They'll do better than that. But I think they're going to fight to get to that 8 or 9 win mark this year. I put them at 7 and 10. That was my prediction earlier on. I'm going to stick with that. They can be competitive, but really, I would evaluate them like this. I think they're the kind of team that's going to win 4 in a row at some point. And they'll also have 2 separate 3-game losing streaks. Very streaky, up and down. There's some games they're going to match up really well, and they're going to kill somebody, and they're going to get beat probably convincingly a couple times as well. So, hey, those are the pains of rebuilding. That's really kind of where Pittsburgh is now.
We've been there. We've been there a few times. Yeah. So, yeah, let's jump right into a fun matchup. I think Josh Allen sort of talked about it here the other day, that these are always, with the Steelers, the last couple of years in the McDermott era, have been pretty much dogfights until the game opens up. Last year, that game didn't really open up until Taron Johnson's interception sort of changed the pace of that game. But up until that point, I don't know if Bills fans really remember, we're real confident here, that was a bit of a slugfest, and neither offense could really get a whole lot going and generated. This is an interesting matchup for me because, one, I don't really know what to expect out of this defense. This was one of the more terrifying defenses in the front 7 a year ago, but without Tuitt and losing Bud Dupree again, and you're adding in Ingram, and like you said, Highsmith is now the starter. Is this front 7, let's kind of start there. Is this front 7 going to be the same almost record-breaking front 7 that we saw through the first half of the season last year? We're going to assume, we're talking offline here, we're assuming TJ Watt's contract's going to get done here by the weekend, and he was back to practice today for those listening, which is a good faith on his part that contract's probably going to get done. I'm assuming he's good to go on Sunday. Is this front 7 as terrorizing as it was a year ago for offensive lines and offenses to worry about, or are they going to take a step back along with the rest of the team?
I'll say this. I think that the beginning of last season, the first 3 or 4 games, when they were giving up literally 17 yards a game rushing, 60% completion, something like that, you had the makings of an absolute dominant defensive unit. I don't think they can replicate that, because I don't think too many teams have ever replicated that. They were off to a great start. They were playing really well. Nose tackle Tyson Alualu got injured. I want to say that was week 4. He missed some time, and then Bush got hurt in week 6, and they didn't quite get back to form. They were a good unit. They weren't that high-level dominant, like they can ride this team to 12 wins style team that we kind of thought they were going to be early on. I will say this, though, that's optimal health for Cam Hayward, legitimately one of the best players in the game, one of the best players in the last 10 years, in my opinion, all pro level guy. He's going to be who he is. Stephon Tuitt is a very underrated player. They're able to do a lot of things with him. He's talented. He's versatile. They can move him inside and out. Not having him is going to be a problem. In fact, I think if the Steelers defense does not come off well, not just in week 1, but through week 4, I think the storyline is going to be without Stephon Tuitt, this is what their defense looks like. Right. That's regardless of TJ Watt. TJ Watt's situation is what it is. Whether he signs an extension or not, he's going to play. I think that's the important thing, at least for Steelers fans. It's going to be key within this game because he's a pretty good player. 2 years ago, he kept Pittsburgh alive in that game that Buffalo ended up winning. I think he had 2 sacks and that huge forced fumble down the field. Mm-hmm. All-pro player. I mean, he's everything that you've heard that he is. Their secondary is going to be a struggle. Here's another thing that I'm not entirely sure as far as projecting the team overall. One thing I'm worried about is the fact that Mike Tomlin still to this point has not mentioned who his slot cornerback is going to be. And considering who they have there right now, I honestly think he might not even know. I mean, it's up in the air. I think they're legitimately going to use 2 or 3 different guys depending on situations. I don't know if anyone else has done that before. Maybe you guys could shed some light on it, but I can't think that's a great formula either. I guess we'll find out. But they had planned in the offseason to turn the reins over to the second-year safety Antoine Brooks, a safety, kind of coverage safety type of kid out of Maryland. He looked pretty good in the preseason. He got hurt. He got cut. And I think he's with the Rams now. So that plan didn't work for reasons I don't know. I don't understand. Arthur Mollett is a guy they signed from the Jets to kind of come in and compete for that slot position. They just traded for Kilo Witherspoon from Seattle, who was a player that – okay, good. Because the weirdest thing with him, he's the most bipolar player in the NFL. You have no idea what you're getting game in and game out with him. Yeah. None whatsoever. And the proof of that is here's a guy that Seattle guaranteed $4 million to sign back in March. And they traded him at the end of training camp. And they're going to replace him with an undrafted rookie. So it's like, what did Witherspoon do? I mean, that's pretty damning of a situation. I mean,
definitely a weird look.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure what the deal is there, but it's important to highlight the ask as well. Seattle got a 5th-round pick in 2023. So in other words, the compensation for taking this guy off the roster as a pick that's not going to be on their team for the next 2 seasons. That to me is more like, well, this is better than cutting him. So, let's just give him to Pittsburgh. What's Pittsburgh going to do with him? He's an outside corner. I'm not even sure what they plan on doing with a depth chart basically that has 5 outside corners and 2 inside guys, one of which hasn't played for you before. And the other one, Cam Sutton, is supposed to be one of your 2 starting cornerbacks. So I guess there's a possibility that they slide Sutton inside.
I was going to say Sutton's played a little on the inside.
Yeah, he came up as their inside guy. They cut Steven Nelson this offseason, one with the idea in mind that they get a pretty good cap savings for it. They saved $8 million for him, and it was the last year of his contract. You can see why that might not work out. I think they would have rather had him, but things don't work out in the NFL all the time. Yeah. And they could put Sutton into that role and have him move inside if they need to. Now, most teams don't want to do that. I'm not totally sure why they don't, but Sutton, he doesn't outright say it, but he's hinted a bunch of times he would rather just stay outside. Probably because that's where the money is, right? So you can see why you might want to do that. If they do that, though, they've got a second-year undrafted cornerback named James Pierre, who I thought was pretty good considering where he came from. He's a run-supporting cornerback with the Steelers' love. He's a big kid. He's tall. He's lanky. I kind of thought he would be their nickel and move Sutton into the slot from there. So I'm not sure what they're going to do with that. I'm not even convinced Mike Tomlin exactly knows what they're going to do with that, but the 3 of us are going to find out at about 105 if Buffalo wins the toss and elects to receive.
Well, and you've got some time, right? Like Sean McDermott, Leslie Frazier talk about every year. You don't know your team until November. It doesn't all have to be figured out in week 1. That's part of the process, out there for Steelers fans. We've been through some of this early in the year. Last year, we were rotating Levi Wallace, Josh Norman. We're getting half snaps, and then they got injured. That went away. So some of that stuff will figure itself out. I want to get back at some point here to that front 7, but while we're talking about this secondary, I think as a Bills fan, and kind of it's hard week 1 because we don't know who these teams are, right? I don't have any DVOA. I don't have what they've done so far this year. But when I'm looking at this roster and how to attack this team and sort of how Steelers played the Bills last year, Eric Turner, our OG head film guy, just put out another film room. That's 2 this week for all those people out there who want content. Just put out another one really highlighting Minkah Fitzpatrick and how they used him last year in some single high safety looks. 60% of the snaps were single high safety looks. When I think about how, if I'm Brian Daboll and how I'm going to attack the Steelers defense, I'm going to spread you guys out because I'm looking at this cornerback room that you just talked about, and I'm saying, shoot, I could put 4 or 5 guys out here. I could put Dawson Knox out here and line them out wide. I can put Gabriel Davis on the field with 3 other wide receivers, and I feel like I can get a matchup of Cole Beasley versus a below-average cornerback, and that's something I can take all day. I can use a Stephon Diggs to draw Fitzpatrick down the field, and try to get him out of the play because he's a ball hawk guy. I don't want him around the ball. What do you think the Steelers are going to try to do differently than we saw a year ago with some of that single high stuff? Because I don't know that they have the corners on the outside to allow some single high looks like that. What are they going to do to combat when the Bills run 10 personnel, 0, when they're running out a lot of wide receivers and trying to attack what we're talking about is maybe a weaker secondary depth wise? How can the Steelers offset that?
Offsetting it, I think it is one thing. I think what the Steelers are going to look to do, just because this really is a Mike Tomlin staple and has been for the last 5 or so years when they've led the NFL in sacks during that time, they're going to say spread it out. If you don't want to, if you want single coverage on our edges, go ahead. We'll race you to the quarterback, best team win. And I think they've done that to some success. But you're absolutely right. You get a guy like Stephon Diggs who's going to take Minkah Fitzpatrick out of the middle, move him around. I'm surprised to hear that that's 60%. I would have thought it'd be more closer to 80. They're usually in some type of single high look. That's really what they've done with Fitzpatrick. Now, I would be speculating to say it, and it's really just a thought because at some point it feels like they're going to have to try this. I would think they'd bring Minkah down. Maybe he's a slot guy that they're looking to use this year. They've been allergic to that up to this point. And as you might recall, that was part of Minkah's complaints when he was in Miami. He was being used in way too many roles. He went to Pittsburgh. He hasn't moved from the same spot on the field. Right. Sit back here and make plays on the ball that come deep. That's what we want you to do. A large part of that is because the Steelers have had the ability to rush the passer at a high level. And to me, a large part of that is two good edge rushers as well as interior guys. You can move to it as well as Hayward inside in different situations. If Buffalo can, and they should, spread them out and have Allen sit back and shotgun and kind of wait for that pressure, I think that's the game. To me, it comes down to that, strength versus strength. Dable is just as capable of drawing up something to beat Pittsburgh's defense in athlete versus athlete, not scheme versus scheme. I think they're just going to put their horses out there and say, go out and make plays. That's the kind of game I think Mike Tomlin wants to play defensively. I think he has confidence in the guys that he has out there. And that against Buffalo, that's worked to some degree the last 2 games. They haven't won, but defensively they've made plays. They've done a pretty good job on that side of the ball. I'm not sure Pittsburgh has it to really stick with them anymore. Call it a hunch. I don't think that the explosion level of that front seven without Tuitt is not going to be enough.
But so many casual fans don't understand the impact Stephon Tuitt's had.
So good. And so real quick here before I hand you over to Greg to talk about the other side of the ball, I want to talk again about that front seven because Tuitt's out, and there's some new faces. We know who TJ Watt is. We know what he can bring in his disruption. We know Cam Hayward. And I agree with you. I don't think casual fans talk enough about how good he is at what he does and can provide for that defense. But you've got some new names. You've got Alex Highsmith. You've got Joe Schubert, Devin Bush coming back. I don't know that a lot of casual fans know how good he is and where he was ascending before that injury. And Alex Highsmith. Can you tell us about some of these new guys that are filling some roles here for the Steelers in that front seven and what fans can expect from them this season?
I think that probably the first domino to fall on that would be Joe Schubert. The key in acquiring him, a guy they picked up with a trade with Jacksonville back in August, is I don't think that's a ringing endorsement for the health of Devin Bush. They gave him the green dot as well, which really kind of means that Schubert's going to be the guy on the field in their dime package. That wouldn't be Bush. And I think what that says really is they needed to go out and acquire a guy that can cover, a linebacker that's going to be able to handle the middle of the field in coverage. I don't think that Bush, he didn't look very good, to be honest with you. I don't think he's healthy. When I say healthy, I mean that, he obviously can walk and they're going to put him out there, but he's not that 10% more that makes Devin Bush a special player. It makes him the 10th overall pick in the draft. You don't have that with him. They needed to go acquire Schubert, who I think fits in very well. And, they can shore up that piece of it. Along with that, though, a kid in Highsmith, and the thing with him that I noticed anyway, is a 3rd-round pick. This is his 2nd year. He's a rookie last year. He's got that kind of old man sensibility when it comes to rushing the passer. He can have a counter move. He uses his hands well. He does not stand up against the run particularly well. And I think Buffalo in particular is going to challenge him. Whether that's Allen, whether that's putting out stretch zone or something in his direction, because he there for whatever reason his hand usage wasn't as strong in my opinion. We'll see how he's come along and what he can handle against the run in particular. But Bush, again, I'm not 100% sure how great he's going to be, at least for the first part of the season, maybe the whole year. I'm not sure. To be an NFL linebacker, you can be where he is now. To be the special kid that he is, he's going to have to get that 10% back. And I'm not sure if he's there yet, but they made the right moves in kind of trying to figure that out. It was definitely the right move not to keep Bud Dupree around just because of cost. And Highsmith looks like he's a pretty good player. They've got some improvement that they need to make, though. And I think early on we might see some struggles there.
No, I think that really goes a long ways to show. There are all kinds of debates. I'm sure was all over. Steelers fans discussing how much was Bud Dupree's talent, how much was playing opposite Watt with Hayward and Tua in the middle. I think it's a worthwhile gamble when you see the upside you do in a guy like Highsmith. And switching to the other side of the ball, there's actually a fair amount of names that fans are familiar with. The receiving core is, kind of a darling in the fantasy realm. You have Juju, you still have Chase Claypool, you have Deontay Johnson, who I think could have a ridiculous game here this week with how the Bills like to give things up underneath, don't let him over top, rally and tackle. I could see a crazy catch game for Deontay Johnson. Let's start with the passing game there. Do you think that what we've heard about Roethlisberger maybe taking the offseason a little more seriously conditioning-wise, getting himself ready, do you think that there's going to be the ability to leverage what I think is a pretty dangerous passing attack from the receiver standpoint?
I think the big thing with Roethlisberger, I thought this was a fair point that he made. He spent a good amount of the last offseason throwing to get his elbow back into shape. Yeah. And you could see by the end, he didn't have a whole lot left. And he threw a lot of balls in the season as well. The team couldn't run to save their lives. He threw 600 times in 15 games, and he's coming off elbow surgery, not probably what they had in mind. This offseason, they go out and really try to ramp up their run game. They drafted basically their run game, the first 4 spots in this year's draft. They signed one tackle to start. They brought in a backup as well. They had to replace the starting guard. They had to replace the starting center. They're really trying to bring back the run so Ben doesn't have to throw as much, I don't think. I mean, it's as simple as that. At the same time, though, and I hate being preseason results guy and getting overexcited about things, but Ben was dealing against Detroit, and it is against Detroit. I'm going to tell you now, Detroit's not going to win a whole lot of games this season. But Ben was throwing with velocity I don't think we've really seen from him in quite a while. I was encouraged from that. We'll see, when he's out there going against, an actual defense, unlike whatever Detroit has for them. It's poor bastards. But he has the ability to make throws the way that he has in the past. I just don't think they want him throwing 45 times a game like he had to last year. You're going to need to be able to run the ball to do that. But to your point, yeah, their receivers are good. Deontay Johnson's a good NFL receiver. They want to get him 160 targets, I guess. I don't know if he's that good, but I'll say this. From what I saw of Chase Claypool, he's a guy to watch this year. He looked really good. Much more fluid athlete than he was last year. Keep in mind, when he was at Notre Dame, he looked like a battleship. He was like 240 pounds. The comparisons to Calvin Johnson athletically and size-wise, I mean, sure, if you want to get into that, you watch him play, he wasn't like that at all. He was really just kind of a go-route guy. Pittsburgh got him to cut a good 15 pounds from his frame, and he all of a sudden had agility. He moved around the field like a deer. He looks even better, I think, this year. I'm curious to see how much of that's going to translate. If that takes targets away from other people, he's going to be a big play guy. He can be a 15-yard catch guy on 80-some catches on probably 130, 40 targets, I think. He would probably be more of the danger guy. I think Johnson, to your point, you said before, they're going to tackle the catch. He's the guy that you're going to throw 13 times, and he's probably going to catch 9 for 12 a pop or something like that. He's going to put out a good, probably more defense allowed game than him taking over. Claypool's the guy that's going to make the plays down the field. He's the guy that's going to get 4 catches for 80 yards and a touchdown, and setting up another touchdown with another big play.
That's the one that makes me nervous, because obviously Tre'Davious White is there, but they haven't shown a propensity to have Trey follow unless it's an absolute. No, it's DeAndre Hopkins with a huge drop off to number 2. It's formerly Kenny Galladay and that big drop off. It was a guy who was a big physical specimen. Don't have to worry about the other side. Here, you have 3 talented receivers. You don't have an obvious one. I am assuming they're going to just leave Trey on one side, Levi Wallace on the other, and go at it. I do think that if Matt Canada is able to scheme up some isolation where they can't get as much safety help over with Levi Wallace, Chase Claypool one-on-one with Levi Wallace in space is a concern for me, and certainly one where they're, I can see that being a leverage point if you're going to, try to find a path to say, what's the story to a Steelers win? It's going to be that kind of matchup, isolation. The other end of it is going to be, like you said, not wanting to throw 45 times a game. Najee Harris has looked awful nice. My partner here to my left was a huge fan of Najee Harris coming out in the draft. Would have been perfectly fine if he fell to the Bills at pick 30. I know a lot of it is what is this offensive line going to make available, but ultimately he has the talent to even create when there's not an obvious space there. Do you think they're ready with the youth, with so many new faces and new places? Are they ready to take advantage of what talent he is, or do you think it might take a little bit to get there?
I think it's going to take a little bit to get there. I like Harris as well. I'm not going to get into the whole draft a running back in the first round thing. I had an entire offseason of that. I'm sick of it. Harris is, in my vantage point, a guy that for a team that couldn't gain a yard in third and short, he's exactly what they need. And when I say they couldn't gain a yard in third and short, I'm not joking. They were literally like 1 for 19 last season in short yardage situations. They were miserable. They got stuffed 4 times against Washington, the first loss that they had on the year, because they had the ball at the 2 and couldn't score. They tried to run 4 times. It didn't work. They brought in Harris to help kind of fix that. And I think if you need 2 yards, Harris can get you 3. But if you need 8, Harris can get you 3. I don't think they're going to be able to really count on him for explosive plays down the field. But he's going to be able to give you solid plays. He can catch the ball. He might be able to make a move or 2 in space. He can gain some yards. He's just not going to be an explosive play guy. So you're looking at, most people ask about his fantasy potential. He's the kind of guy that on 17 games, volume alone, he's going to get 1,200 yards, but he's going to be dog tired by the end of the year. He's going to have 400 plus touches. I can almost guarantee have some of those now.
23 carries, 65 games.
Yep.
Hopefully, for his sake, not many of those, but you're going to have some of those. It's simply going to be, if Ben doesn't have it that day and they're really selling out to stop the run, early on, I don't think this offensive line's ready to just carve out rushing lanes.
No, definitely not.
Take care of my sweet Najee. Do not kill him in 1 year. You're gonna need him. Don't kill him in one.
Mike Tomlin loves his running backs so much he will destroy all of them if he has the opportunity. Ask Rashard Mendenhall, ask Willie Parker, ask Le'Veon Bell. These are all guys that 350 plus touch guys that got hurt in their last games playing in Pittsburgh. Yeah. Tomlin just destroyed them. He loves.
It is the way to use them. Run them until their wheels fall off. And
that's literally what he said too. I think he wants to go back and erase that particular quote from his vernacular, but he lives it. I mean, Harris is going to be tired. He's going to get plenty of action for sure.
Yeah. So now that we've walked through the matchups, we've walked through the possibilities here. First, walk us through what you think the narrative would need to be to see a Steelers win here this Sunday, and then give us what your prediction is of what you think is going to happen.
No, boy. Turnovers. Buffalo's going to have to turn the ball over 4, if not 5 times. I just don't think that the Steelers offense is going to be at a point that they're going to be able to control field position. I don't think they're going to be able to kind of squeeze Buffalo back. 4 turnovers and probably 2 50-plus yard plays from Claypool. I think that might give Pittsburgh something of an advantage, and then probably 5-6 sacks. I don't think any of those things are going to happen, to be honest. I think Buffalo's a great team. They're going to win a lot of games. They're not going to lose at home very often. I don't think there's any shame in Pittsburgh losing in Buffalo, but I think you might see it kind of like last year, just a little bit more one-sided to Buffalo in the second half, probably tight right away. Buffalo will pull away 31-17. I think it's going to be one of those kinds of games. You're sweating maybe a little bit at halftime, but they'll make big plays down the stretch and just kind of pull away in the fourth quarter.
No, we certainly appreciate your time tonight, and I think that we saw the comments here. Everybody in the chat was saying what a fantastic breakdown this was. So once again,
wow, there are a lot of comments.
Oh, yeah, no, it's been great tonight. Make sure, let the folks know, obviously, senior editor of all NFL content over at USA Today. What can the fans expect from you this season when they're checking out your work after being so impressed with your breakdown tonight? Yeah,
I appreciate it. It's a great audience. You guys are fantastic hosts. It's a great show. I enjoyed being here. I run the NFL Wire Network. powered and sponsored by USA Today Sports Media Group. Steelers Wire is the site that I started, and I kind of still tend to favor that probably more than the others. At least that's what the editors tell me. A lot of great content on there. Every team across the NFL. Come check it out. We're in social media as well. We try to just be conversational, fun, and get content out the door and talk about our favorite teams.
No, we appreciate it so much, man.
Yeah, man, thanks so much.
Obviously, besides Sunday, best of luck the rest of the year. We wish you guys all the
Definitely.
best and hope for a fun
and health throughout, no matter what.
That's the key thing. One injury, and that's it.
Yeah.
We'll be talking top 10 in the draft. But great stuff, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming out, man.
Much. Obviously, an awesome guest to have someone like Neal out there to be able to break it down. You guys saw, his ability to go into the X's and O's of everything on that Steelers roster. You can tell the passion that he brings, and I feel weird because I don't feel terribly different than he does. They're a good team. They are a storied franchise for a reason.
Well
they
coached.
have great coaching. They have high level talent. Man, the couple spots where they're rough are the wrong spots to be rough against this Bills roster. I do not know how they're going to match up with the wide receiver core. They need to get home. They need that front seven to get home. They need a monster game out of TJ Watt. They need a monster game out of Cam Hayward. And they need to give that secondary all the extra chances they can get, because there's a lot of moving parts right now with an experienced, chemistry-filled, continuity-based offense that is ready to hit on all cylinders. I do think they could be in some trouble.
Yeah, I think there's they have a few holes. Lack of depth. I think the depth for the Bills is really going to be something that separates them from a lot of these teams this year, and their ability to have a player go down and just not miss as big of a step as some of these other teams. When you look at this depth of the Steelers team, especially at that cornerback position, like we were talking with Neal here, the Bills have that ability where if you aren't deep at cornerback, we can just run numbers and get favorable matchups. If I can get a Cole Beasley or a Gabe Davis or Emmanuel Sanders matched up against my sign back here, I don't know if you can see it, says that I love below average to adequate defensive backs. But if I don't want to see Cole Beasley matched up against these guys, they're going to win every time. And Cole Beasley talked about it today in Josh Allen's ability to get him the ball quickly out of these option routes. He hasn't had a quarterback be able to deliver him the ball so quickly. You have a lot of continuity with this type of stuff. And it's not just Cole Beasley. Josh is processing the game at a different level even than he was a year ago. So having that type of matchup, it's just hard to think 4 quarters you're going to be able to not allow that to leak out a little bit. My only concern here isn't on paper. It isn't in this matchup. It's week 1, Greg.
It is.
I hate week 1 in the NFL. I hate it with a passion. Totally wacky stuff happens. We all overreact. The Steelers come out.
How's Kyle Brandt put it? Week 1 is a liar?
Yes, it really is.
Week 1 is a liar.
Every single year on Twitter, people don't get it. Like a couple years ago, the Browns had a really nice week 1. It was like 2 or 3 years ago, and everyone's like, the Browns they're gonna be a Super Bowl.
The Jacksonville Jaguars beat the Colts in week 1 and then didn't win again the rest of the season.
And so that's maybe my only concern, is that week 1's a little weird. But just in terms of on paper, I think the Steelers are good. I agree with kind of what you were saying, that, and what Neal was saying, that it could be a little bit of a slugfest to start while everybody kind of gets warmed up to the year. But I think there's just too much pressure that this offense provides. And without Tuitt providing the rush on the interior, I think they're going to be able to give a little more help to covering up Watt. I don't know how much Ingram has left, and Highsmith. I don't know what they're going to be able to bring in terms
especially
of athletic.
without the attention to it brings in the center there.
Yeah, I think it just they did a pretty good job last year with Watt and being able to neutralize him. So that's a good test again for the tackles, but they did a good job doing that last year. And it wasn't just Watt. They did a pretty decent job with Bosa. They had a little bit of a run there with some very athletic, top of the line edge rushers that they were able to sort of neutralize and keep off Josh's own ability to escape the pocket and stuff. It matters. But yeah, if they're going to win, it's going to be through that front seven, creating pressures, creating havoc, and getting turnovers and covering up some of the areas in the secondary. But I think Daboll's going to really exploit this secondary and just be able to. I don't know that it will be a blowout. I don't have it as a blowout, but at least at an arm's length for an enjoyable Sunday of knowing that game's going to be in hand.
Yeah, and I think being in the position that they're in, one of the spots that I think in theory could create some challenges is with the return game, is with Daboll's interest in scheming some things up. And that's why tonight's Uncle Jumbo's player spotlight is going to be Isaiah McKenzie. And that it's for multiple reasons. Obviously, there was a great debate today with our man, Jay Spencer King, talking about Andre Roberts and the return game. We saw Matt Breida's usage in the preseason in that game that you and I went to together. They schemed up multiple touches for him.
I like when you talk about stuff we do together too, just so you know.
The jet motion swing passes, jet motion bubble screens, they gave it to him a couple times. I still believe that is fully Isaiah McKenzie's role. I love the idea that Matt Breida is available for that. I think that was a backup plan just in case, that they didn't want to lose that in the playbook if Isaiah McKenzie was out. I don't think they're ready to give that to Matt Breida over Isaiah McKenzie. I'm curious, is he ready to be both the gadget guy and the primary returner when ball security, game-breaking ability, maybe even backup slot duty, is he ready to wear all those hats?
So I'm ready to take a little bit of an L here. One of my preseason predictions was I didn't think Isaiah McKenzie would make this roster. I didn't think his contract showed a lot of confidence in him as a player. And I just saw the numbers and they didn't favor him, in my opinion. I thought that role was easily replicated and you could get somebody in return kicks. From all indications, I didn't go to any of the practices or anything, but from all indications, especially early in camp, he was seemingly lights out and much better as a receiver and in the role of receiver than we had previously seen. So this is a guy I'm super excited to see if the reports from camp translate. He had that injury and it was a little bit of a hiccup. Then he had the stuff with COVID. So he had a little bit of a hiccup here in training camp. I'm interested to see if the success he had early in training camp translates to the game, because it will be limited touches. He is going to, the Bills he'll probably get a few chances to return and maybe 5 or 6 schemed up plays where he's an option and he won't always get the ball in those opportunities. So he's going to have to make the most of it. But you nailed it. It's ball security. We saw it in the preseason that it's still an issue. I think in terms of the argument we were having with Spence, I love Andre Roberts. Everybody knows in this show that has watched the show, I'm a huge fan of toxic differential.
Yes.
Andre Roberts had a number when we came on these post-game shows and we were counting them up.
Besides Josh and Stephon
He
Diggs.
really did. And I counted those beyond the 25, right?
Yeah.
Like anything beyond what you would touch back. And he would set your team up with great field positions. I'm a big fan of Andre Roberts. It's not about that. My thing is, how significant is that drop-off, right? Like,
yes.
I don't know right now. And that's what I'm interested to find out with McKenzie. If he can have ball security, I don't know that the return ability drop-off is that significant. I think that he'll be able to break some of those big returns as well. But for most of his career as a Buffalo Bill, Andre Roberts was great in terms of ball security and decision-making. You brought up towards the end there was some pressing and some bad decision-making. I don't know if that was a sign of his downfall or not. But really, that is where we haven't seen, and I don't know that anyone really saw it through camp, of where Isaiah McKenzie is with that. The other stuff, receiver, gadget guy, the explosiveness in his ability to do things with the ball, it's all
plays.
there. Yeah. We just need to see, and that's it. Sneaky concern with all of special teams outside Tyler Bass is right now is consistency. And I don't want to be on this post-game show with you talking about lack of consistency with special teams, because it really, a game like this blows it open and you give a team that shouldn't hang around in a game an opportunity to be in a game.
Yeah. And I talked about it in that conversation earlier today, that I think the team was focused on who was ready to fill the role that they needed Andre Roberts to be. And I don't know if Andre Roberts was still that guy. And
right.
that he rightfully had a lot of really good returns last year. Towards the end, he started to press a little bit. And I don't know if that was just bad timing. Human nature is recency bias is a term for a reason. It's really easy to fall prey to just the last thing that you saw. The last thing that I saw was him muffing a punt and then immediately trying to make up for it, coming out of the taking one from like 7 yards deep out of the end zone, and then in the playoff game getting tackled at the 12-yard line. Like that's not acceptable. Like you are there for your exceptional judgment. That was what we always praised. It wasn't these he probably wasn't really a threat to take it to the house anymore. He was just so good at getting those 35 yard chunk plays all the time because he had the aggressive nature and he could run up and get it and go. I know that Isaiah McKenzie's probably the better athlete today than Andre Roberts is at age 33. I just don't know, is he ready to have that judgment? Andre Roberts never let the ball drop. He never let you get those, you just lost 7-10 yards on a punt bounce. He always knew when to field it. He knew when to run up and aggressively take forward a kick return, or how to get the extra, always squeezing out just those little, hey, make one guy miss and get you an extra 7 yards on a punt return that a lot of guys would have just got tackled or fair caught. That's what I'm curious if Isaiah McKenzie's ready for. I know he could be a gadget guy. I know he can be a fun guy in the locker room. I know that when the ball gets in his hands, he can do good things with it. I'm curious about that split second of when he catches it to secure the ball and when he knows when to run up and what to do with it, when he doesn't need to unnecessarily fair catch or unnecessarily let it bounce. Can he run up and get the ball and make a guy miss and get us that extra little bit that Andre Roberts was so exceptional at? And we're all going to find out. We're all going to find out where he was going. And Taylor brings it up here. McKenzie's fumble on the punt was on a dead sprint. He was running up it was a bad punt, and he was running up to get it. And honestly, that is my point. Those were the balls. Andre Roberts was great at coming up and not letting it bounce, and then you reward the punter for a bad punt because you give him the 15 yards of a bounce because you weren't ready to come up and field it. Right. Andre Roberts was exceptional at those, and Taylor's right. That is one of the most difficult to field, and that, Kevin here even coming afterwards, sometimes you let those bounce. But that's why Andre Roberts was an all-pro, and that's why he was so good at his job, and where he created those extra little yards that you didn't count. When that bounces for 10 yards, that's a net 10 extra. That was yardage that even if he got up and only got a 2-yard return, well, a 10-yard bounce and a 2-yard return, that's plus 12 for Andre Roberts. I want to know if
Congrats on the math.
Is ready for that. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And we'll find out. I think it's probably one of the few really unknowns with the amount of continuity coming back, and that being a total changeover on special teams. Is they seem to have the confidence in them, and so we'll find out if that's legitimate, or is this something that we're going to be sweating every time the ball goes up in the air this year? I hope not.
Yeah, it's going to be a great path to be able to show.
Here's one I want to discuss that we haven't even touched on here today. We didn't even talk about injuries. Worried about Star Latule's availability in this one. We saw Sean McDermott had talked about earlier in the week here that he was trending in the right direction. But then again, today at practice, he was a non-participant. We did see Taron Johnson was back limited. Emmanuel Sanders was limited. Harrison Phillips, full go. And who else was on their full go? Somebody else was on their full go. Anyways, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, Harrison Phillips, Taron Johnson limited.
Maybe Dane Jackson full go, or Levi Wallace or somebody like that. And so I'm not worried about Star's availability. And here's why. Because I don't think Sean McDermott was lying. I think he's probably trending in the right direction. And he might not be available for Sunday's game. But I'm not worried that this is some long-term thing that's going to linger for Star Latule throughout the year. And I think they've done enough along this defensive line this year that's different, and adding some of the edge guys that can play inside, and Harrison Phillips coming back bigger, stronger, and seemingly like he's actually a full go here with that knee, where I think you can get through a game without Star. It's not ideal. We all want to see Tremaine and Matt Milano play behind Star and Ed Oliver play next to Star. We've been talking about it ad nauseum for 3-4 months, waiting to see what that's going to look like. But I can wait one more week, and that he's not going to be a lingering injury. Or how about you? Are you worried about it for this particular game?
This is the game that we could survive it, because of the turnover and rookies playing with the Steelers' interior line. I don't want that long term, but if we have to pick a game where we need to be able to identify, Harrison Phillips' readiness or not, this is the game to figure that out.
Right.
So again, I'm going to interpret Sean McDermott's comments as that he's going to trend from did not practice to limited to full as the week goes, but we need to see that. He needs to be limited on Thursday. He needs to be full on Friday in order to play. So we have to see that movement. The one player we forgot was Isaiah McKenzie was technically listed as full because of his shoulder.
Right.
So being able to go through and figure out where we're going to use that, seeing Harrison Phillips as a full participant was great. So it's something where I don't love that Starr was there, but I'm still based on McDermott's comments, I'm still assuming that was kind of easing him back in, veteran rest, that he's going to be able to be there and understand where it's coming from.
And let's not lie to ourselves too. We're excited for Starr Latulia's return. He's not going to get 80% of the defensive snaps along this defensive line. So even if he does return to health, he's still in a limited role. I think there's going to be a heavy rotation along the defensive line. I think all these vets, your Jerry Hughes, your Mario Addison, your Starr Latulias, are going to see a decrease in their snap count anyway. So even when him coming back or not, I don't think it's going to be a major number of snaps in the defense this year. And so I do think they can get 1 week without him. If, say, tomorrow he goes into the training room and he's just not quite there to go through for a game. At this point, it's a long season. He's been out for a year. I'd rather give him the week off if he needs it and roll through there. Real quick, before we get to, I had another point that I wanted to talk about before we get to the game predictions here. I think this is a huge test for the linebackers in this game with Najee Harris, with those tight ends. Eric put out a great video of them sort of stressing. This is probably the biggest question mark about this defense is, can they cover tight ends? Can this linebacking core cover? Because that's really what separated the Chiefs' ability outside of the Tyreek Hill play is we saw the biggest weakness of this defense a year ago was ability to cover tight ends and dealing with defense. I think this is a good test early on to see, because they're going to have a number of teams where they're coming up against this year where that's going to be something that gets attacked. So, and I think that this is going to be something that Canada tries to attack in the Bills defense. Are you looking at this as one of the bigger matchups? We didn't talk about it with the defensive side of the ball too much and how they're going to attack, but are you worried about it at all with Edmonds and Milano?
So, yes, that concerns me going into the season. I think a lot of people have shown that when healthy, they've actually been very, very good against tight ends. Last year was a perfect storm. Both guys were dinged up, and then we literally played every good tight end in the NFL. We played Darren Waller, we played George Kittle, we played Travis Kelce, like every single great tight end. So that perfect storm made it look like we have a problem. If you go back to the previous 2 seasons, we were exceptional against tight ends. So we'll see where that nets out by itself. I don't know that the running back tight end matchup this week is the kind that I'm concerned with. Obviously, Eric Ebron is good at finding space in the zone, using leverage. He's not the athlete he was when he was coming out of the draft anymore. Pat Freiermuth is a huge target. He's a big guy with a lot of range, a catch radius, but that's actually kind of what Tremaine Edmonds matches up well against. Like he has the wingspan and the reach to cover that. He struggles more with the speed and the nuance of guys who are really big slot receivers and not actually the big inline tight end. Same thing with Najee Harris. Najee Harris is very underrated out of the backfield, but they struggle more with raw speed coming out of the backfield on the wheel routes on the different pieces there.
You don't even say anything negative about Najee Harris. Don't do it.
Najee Harris is a phenomenal overall back. I don't know that he's just straight out running away from Matt Milano or torching him. He might be able to break a tackle. He might be able to juke him.
Create some separation with route. He's a good route runner.
Sure. So I am concerned about that through this season. I don't know that this is the week that's the part that concerns me, and it would certainly be Harris over Ebron or Freiermuth if I was to pick one of those that are going to be a concern. I think the tight end part, this is honestly a pretty good warm-up because I think that because of the lack of continuity in the offensive line, they're probably going to run a fair amount of 2 tight end sets to get an extra blocker on the field,
Right.
not just running routes. So we'll see where those pieces go, and we'll see what the how that progresses as the year goes.
So one more talking about extra blockers here before we get our game predictions. I put out a tweet earlier here in the week, and then we've talked about it a little bit offline. I feel like there's a narrative brewing here amongst Bills media and things like that, and some of the questions that were asked of sack production in this defensive line and all that went into it this preseason, and all the excitement of Greg Rousseau leading the NFL in pressure rates and things like that. And I think there's building up to this week 1 where there's an expectation that the Bills are going to come out and just get 4 or 5 sacks on Ben Roethlisberger, and that this is going to be the most dominant defensive line in football. While I think they will be much improved and could be a really dominant unit, I just don't know that it's going to happen week 1. Do you think there's going to be pressure? Do you agree with me that there's some sort of narrative forming? And Leslie Frazier spoke to it today that, there's pressures too that matter, and they don't, not all pressures generate sacks. And we saw a year ago, Ben Roethlisberger led the league in time to throw and getting the ball out really fast out of his hand. And the older he gets, and same with guys like Ryan Fitzpatrick, they're getting the ball out quick. And so really, I think the Bills defense with that length and stuff needs to get their hands up in passing lanes and compress the pocket and stuff like that. And those pressures will matter, but I think Bills Mafia on Twitter and the Bills media, that won't be an acceptable at the end of this game if there's only 1 sack or just a few QB hits, but the pressures are there. Do you see kind of a narrative forming where they're going to beat on that if the sacks aren't there here this weekend?
100%. Hey, I'm confident we're going to see it, and this isn't going to be the week to measure that. You're going to want to measure that in the games against guys like Tua and Mac Jones and guys that we know they're young and are going to hold on to the ball too long because they're not ready to process it. Ben Roethlisberger, even if his arm's healthy, even if everything's there, he's exceptional at getting the ball out early. It's like going into a game against Ryan Fitzpatrick. They just don't get sacked because you can't get to them. They get the ball out early. They make the decision quickly. The ball is out. Ben Roethlisberger still has Deontay Johnson on one side, Juju Smith-Schuster on the other side, and every once in a while he's going to take a deeper shot to Chase Claypool. But with those 2 guys plus Ebron, they're going to be dumping it off. And then the Bills defense, there's some discussion going on in the chat about it. The Bills defense is built to give up catches underneath, rally and tackle, bet that you don't have the discipline to do it all the way down the field, and that you're going to have an incompletion, you're going to have a sack, you're going to have a penalty, get yourself into 3rd and long, and then we know you're predictable, and that is what bend but don't break is. It's about not giving up the big plays and bet you don't have the discipline to go on a 15 play drive against us. And every once in a while teams do, but ultimately they break down, they have to get the ball back, and we score. And that you're just betting that there's going to be enough that net out that way that you're able to do that. So this week, I will say maybe there's a few just straight up blown protection schemes that you get a free release sack or 2. And I hope we don't go the whole game with none. I'd like to be able to get some legitimate, not just pressure, but finishing with a sack on Ben Roethlisberger. But he had lots of games last year where he had no sacks because he just got rid of the ball so quickly. So
and their line wasn't good, even though they're bringing in rookies, and we're talking about inexperience. The line was not good.
Yeah,
last year
there's a reason
either.
David DeCastro retired, and there's a reason that Pouncey retired. They were names, they weren't those guys anymore. They weren't still those guys.
Like me, a shell of my former self.
A shell of your former self. So I do think that's going to be a big piece of it, and I do hope, just because I don't want that narrative to form, because I do think we're going to see more sacks and pressures this year. 4
or 5 sacks in this week one, so we don't have to talk about it. Yeah, and it's fun.
Yes, more likely that's going to come in your games against New England, against Miami. We play a lot of young rookie receivers. I think that's going to be the piece that comes up. I will post.
Greg loves money, but nothing more than money. He loves hearing that he's right.
Yeah. That, out of the 2 things, those are 2 of my favorite things on earth: being right and money. True. So it's fantastic. Quintal, we appreciate you very much, man. And it's going to be interesting to be able to see where it goes. But this game, we're going to put ourselves on the spot here. I'll lead off and take a stab at it first. I do believe it's going to start a little bit more slowly. I do think it's going to take a minute to get into it, but I just don't see how this secondary is going to keep up with the Bills' passing offense. We saw in that Packers game, they passed on 17 of the first 18 plays of the game. They passed on 29 of the first 32 plays of the game. Almost all of that was shotgun, no huddle, hurry up offense. I think they're going to come at the Steelers in waves. I think that it's going to jump on them quickly, and I think this could get maybe out of hand for a second, and then I do think the Steelers can hit a big play. Whether it's a defensive play, Minka Fitzpatrick, T.J. Watt, an exceptional player making an exceptional play, or Chase Claypool. That there is not a guy in our secondary who can physically match up with Chase Claypool. Now we have Poyer, Hyde, and Trey, who are technically sound enough that they absolutely can keep him under control. But if he gets a little bit of space, he's just bigger and faster than the guys on our team. We don't have anyone in our secondary that's as fast as he is, especially at the size that he is. So to think that we might not give up a single play to him all game, I think is naive. I think they're going to be able to have a big play or two that makes them feel like they're back in it, and then the Bills are going to pull away again. And I think that we're going to see something. I don't know that our defense is ready to completely shut them down. I don't think we're going to put up some, hold them to 10 points or something crazy. Our ball in there, Greg Rousseau with
bold.
8+
That's
sacks
a bold take.
and missing out on Defensive Rookie of the Year. Bills Mafia will let Twitter hear about that. So
Yeah.
certainly appreciate it. I think that the Bills are going to pull away and end up with a 34-24 victory. I'm going with the over. I think the Bills are going to cover the 6.5 point spread. And I even think it might be like 34-17 and then a late score by the Steelers to make it look closer at 10 points. I think that they're going to be in control, and that later on, I think this Steelers team is going to be better than they show week one. They got some guys that are on short-term IR. They just traded for Akella Witherspoon. They're still figuring out who their best 5 offensive linemen are. Najee Harris, first game as a rookie. I think late in the season, this team might still be good. Mike Tomlin's too good of a coach. Their staff is too strong. I do not think this team's going to struggle and crumble. I do think it might get off to a rocky start. But what say you?
So similar, I think, idea here. I do think it's going to take a little bit to start out and get going. We've seen a little bit historically here. The Bills have taken a little bit of time in week one to really get their stride on both sides of the ball, really. My final score is going to be 27-17, which is, again, covering the spread. I think the Steelers probably score late. Bills give up a late touchdown and make it look closer. I think the Steelers probably hang around that 10-point, margin. The Bills just sort of have it out of hand. I think towards the end of this game, the Bills are going to be able to establish the run a little bit. I think they get out to an early lead with that spread offense, and you see Allen being surgical, moving the ball down the field, getting some early scores. But I think with to it out and some of the lack of depth along that defensive line. And I do think they're going to try to bring guys to rush. They're going to do some creative stuff with getting Singletary the ball. I think they're going to be able to run the ball a little bit in this game and start to establish some run. I see some opportunities in the run game for them. So come out early, dinking and dunking, moving the ball, maybe a couple big shot plays to get the score up. But then we saw it against the Steelers team where you are able to run your 4-minute drills. You're able to really just move the ball down the field and keep them at an arm's length here. So I have it 27-17, but honestly, I do agree that I'll never be the guy to come on here and predict that, the Bills are going to win 38-3 or anything like that. But this is a game that has the potential to really get out of control because of the lack of depth in that secondary. And if things are clicking the way we saw Josh Allen dealing in the preseason, granted that was backup Green Bay players, but he has that ability no matter who he's on the field against. If they're clicking in that way and this defense is able to take the step forward that we think they are, this game could get pretty out of control at Highmark Stadium here this weekend, and could be one of those big week one blowouts where we just lose our minds and we're all buying Super Bowl tickets. But the person that tries to remain objective in me is going to say the Bills are going to cover the spread, and that at the end of the game it'll look a little bit closer than that game actually was, and that the Bills will keep it at an arm's length pretty much the entire time. Nope, I lost you.
I think the ability to make sure that we're reasonable, it's still I think that's where the prediction is, and I think that reasonable doesn't have to mean conservative or consciously muted.
No.
We want to be objective. There are going to be games. We're going to, the Bills are going to have
34 and 27 points is still a good.
In some cases, it's still a ton of points.
Yeah.
And it's something to be able to go through there. But I'm curious if this Steelers defense in the secondary is ready to live up to that name that they've had for so long. So we'll see where they're at. Taylor's here on the same page as me, 34-24. Our ball thinking the Steelers D is still strong enough, but 24-10 that he's a big faith in the
so
Bills
everyone's
defense.
sort of in the same.
Daniel 31-23.
ranges.
Yeah, an awful lot of those. I think it's there. Troy here 28-10. I do think that's the kind of game that we're looking at here. So really excited. The chat was fantastic tonight. You guys,
thank you guys
awesome.
so much.
So again, our show tonight brought to you by our lovely sponsors, T-Shirt University. Again, going to be bringing out that exclusive shirt, Get You Mafia ready for this season. Those shirts will be available in that Walden Galleria store September 15th. Our friends over at Uncle Jumbo's, we have so much fun stuff going on this season. We may be doing a live show from their new tasting room when it's ready. They have their new products coming out. Obviously, you can still get all the great drinks like what Aaron's enjoying here tonight.
Enjoyed.
Along with the American vodka, as well as they're going to be coming out with a new whiskey bourbon product that I'm very excited to find out about. And then our friends over at Underdog Fantasy, download the app, use promo code COVER1, get yourself $25 for free with a $10 minimum deposit. It's going to be awesome throughout this year, and I'm going to give a quick plug for what they're about. If you struggled before with being frustrated going on to like the DFS sites where you're playing against people with 250 lineups and some algorithm, this is just drafting. So the fun that you have during the year or during the preseason of drafting your fantasy team and picking it out, you get to do that every week. And you go against, you can pick 3 guys or 6 guys or 10 guys or 12 guys and just do a 1-week draft. And then whoever drafts Josh Allen, you're the only person to have Josh Allen. Whoever drafts Stephon Diggs, you're the only person to have Stephon Diggs. And you play against that league for that 1 week, and the winner takes the money. So it's really fun. It's a fun format. They also have their player prop parlays you're going to be able to check out and do over-unders on whether you think, if you think this weekend, let's say, is going to be tough because of the Pittsburgh front seven. So you're going to pick the under on Devin Singletary's yards, but you don't think they're going to be able to contain Stephon Diggs or Josh Allen, and you pick the over on Josh Allen's yardage and the over on Stephon Diggs' yardage. Those 3 picks, if you get them all right, you get 10 times your money on your wager. So
I like 10 times money.
Yeah, I like 10 times anything.
One thing I think
it's going to
super
be a lot
cool
of fun to try it out.
Yeah, and one thing I think super cool is if you follow Underdog on social media, their transparency. They talked about some of the problems in daily fantasy and the working they are doing, and how they ban people from the app if they're trying to manipulate the app in any way. And that, I don't do a lot of gambling, but when I do, I've done some of the other apps in the past and been frustrated at the formats and how people are able to game the system. So knowing that they're trying to keep it a fun environment where people can't just come in with these big algorithms and bots and things like that and totally game their system makes it feel better that you're playing against real people, and it's just a straight up fun competition for me, small amounts of money here and there to keep the season fun and have something additional to my fantasy leagues to do.
And we're gonna end here with a final shot from the man who is finally healthy today, and certainly is expressing the feelings that we were. The wait is finally over. Game week is here.
I can't wait.
And we have our one tech Harrison Phillips ready to bring us into the season. So
these next 3 days, though, Greg, now that all my angst is out from getting to this show and doing the preview show with you, obviously we've still got disguised coverage for you here this week. But this is the worst part. I'm gonna be that meme from Narcos of where he's just sitting around waiting, standing in the pool. That's me all the rest of this week, trying to. Yeah, I'll probably have my whole house cleaned twice over the next few days, listening to all the Bills content, not just Cover One. Everybody out there's content, just trying to consume it all because this is the long stretch now.
Yeah. So thank you guys very, very much. The chat was awesome tonight. You guys are fantastic. Awesome engagement. Appreciate Neal, as you guys said, fantastic guest. Hope you enjoyed him. We're going to be bringing you guys guests like that all season long to preview each game each week as we go. But this has been an awesome show. On behalf of our friends at Underdog Fantasy, Uncle Jumbo's, T-Shirt University, Aaron Quinn, I am Greg Thompson. You have been listening